Hello everybody and welcome back to WedSNESday. I am Luke. It's just me this week, but I wanted to do a bit of an interlude episode since we got to a regularly decent stopping point with Evo. We will be returning to Evo next week, but Matt is out this week, and so I thought it would be a perfect time to take a look at a classic that was actually released on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, as you can see on the screen, Sierra design. Oh boy, it's King's Quest V, but not the King's Quest V that we just finished playing on Sierra Saturdays. No sir, this is King's Quest V on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Way back in the early to mid 90s, of course, the NES was still sort of a viable system, and so you managed to see games that were coming out on PC, and obviously with fantastic looking VGA graphics, were still sort of coming, or Sierra was experimenting with looking at picking up games or releasing games on some of the major consoles because they did have an enormous market share. Super Nintendo just coming out, I don't think they must not have had access to one of the development kits, or they just decided that the NES was still viable enough to release on, and so we get this version of King's Quest V, which is a very rare beast. Not a whole lot of the King's Quest series, not a whole lot of the Sierra classics made it onto consoles in general until much later, like like Leisure Suit Larry Magna Cum Laude, for example, but that's not even really generally considered a Sierra game or a sequel to one of the old Quest games. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump right into it. I just wanted to kind of look at the intro of the game and let you see just how this game showed up on the NES. And of course, the opening sequence with Mordak stealing the castle at Daventry. You know, for the limitations of the NES, this actually came up pretty decently. Now, I know that if you just finished recently watching King's Quest V on Sierra Saturdays, or if you've even gone and looked at King's Quest VI, then this looks very different, and probably significantly graphically inferior, but there's only so much that you could accomplish with the NES. It was an 8-bit system, which means that you had very tight limitations on sprite limits and color limits. I believe this is 16 colors was your maximum palette, and it's a very specific palette too on the NES. And also sprites being at a premium, creating sort of very detailed screens like this required that instead of using single hand drawn backgrounds like they did in the PC version, you instead had to deal with essentially tiles of 16 by 16 or 32 by 32 sprites, and this is sort of what you get out of it. Now I'm going to take the I'm going to attempt to press a button because it appears to be stuck at this "Oh my castle's" line, but I hope that I'm not going to be skipping anything important. There you go. Ah, Cedric. And of course, they couldn't do a whole lot of the cinematic scenes that they did as well, and of course, no voices either. So some might consider that a benefit. But yeah, they had to, of course, paraphrase some of it because, different audience, different system altogether. But let's just enjoy this together. Now, I mean, if you've watched the King's Quest V that we did on Sierra Saturday, and this is sort of a Sierra Saturday crossover episode, if you like, of course you'll note that the story was you'll already sort of be familiar with this story, so we probably don't need to go too far into sort of. I'm not going to wait a long time for you to read all of this text. Yeah, I mean, it's basically what you already know, right? The plot being that evil wizard Mordek came and stole Castle Daventry. Cedric offers to help you by bringing you to his employer, a wizard named Crispin-Offer, who is also known as Crispin for short. And yes, he's going to take me using his fairy dust over there, where we can get started on our adventure in the land of what is it, Serenia in King's Quest V, I think. Not a whole lot of incidental animations or anything like that here either, so. Yeah, you'll even note that the pixie dust is essentially just a couple of tiled sprites that popped across for you to just sort of get a general idea of what's going on here. Now, I know if you are attempting to, oh boy, if you're attempting to sort of compare this with the old PC version that we recently played, you're going to be sort of very disappointed with sort of the quality level of what you're seeing here. But believe me, with the Nintendo, the NES, the original NES, the 8-bit system, this is actually a technical achievement. This is a high quality technical achievement, despite the fact that in many ways it kind of looks pretty awful. They probably could have put a little bit of effort into making some of the edges of the tiles a little bit less obvious, but I think they were also working off of trying to make it feel similar to the way that it came out originally. Crispin looks a lot more badass than he did in the original King's Quest V. Now, obviously, I'm not going to have the time to play through the entire game on the NES version unless you guys request it. And that would be a very interesting request. We would certainly do it, although you've already seen us do it on the channel once. But I would have to relearn how to play the game with a controller. And see, now this room looks pretty fantastic. They, well, when it's not covered in a screen here, they had absolutely the ability to do some great things with their sprite tiling here, but yeah, in any individual screen, there is only so much that you can display on an NES as far as customized full backgrounds are concerned. You can add a couple of sort of custom elements, like that chest down in the corner, and the chairs and things like that. But yeah. Was I can't imagine that it was an easy feat. The music is also, of course, stuck, using the NES's old sort of low quality wavetable, and there is basically just like a couple of sawtooths and sort of a warbly sign that they could use to make your most of your game music. It's because of the palette, which is mostly like various sort of shades of brown and yellow, a couple of teals and some pinks and oranges and things like that. It's and purples and what have you. It's a little bit difficult to create quite the vibrant world that you got in the PC version. Like, let's take a quick look. We're just gonna do a little. Look out, Graham, a poisonous snake. Yeah, so I'm controlling with the regular D-pad. And so we're just gonna, as opposed to actually actively trying to win the game, I'm just going to sort of wander around, and we'll take a look at the scenery and so on. Maybe talk to a couple of characters. You don't really need to talk to these people that much. Oh, and here's how they handled the UI. Of course, you just had a D-pad, an A and a B, and select. Just there you go. Allows you to. So just click the mouth and move over to this gentleman. They handled the conversation with these sorts of small and sort of limited height. What is that? 4, 8, 16, maybe 32-ish tall sort of character portraits as well for each. I'm not even actually entirely sure if the NES version has all of the same puzzles that the original PC version did, but your bakery, and moving westward, we should find ourselves, yes, at the inn. Let's go over and take a look at the town, because I found that the town was sort of one of the most striking things for me when I started to test playing this. They really gave it their all. They tried their damnedest to make use of like dithering and things like that in order to create a little bit more volume. Like those trees, despite the fact that it's just basically black and green, still look decently like trees. So, but yay, town. Oh, I love this little crappy 4-channel rendition of the old town music. And here's the guy that's fixing his wagon wheels, of course. Let's go talk to him, see what he has to say for himself. Oop. Oh, the interface is so tough. I want to talk. There we go. And we click that, and then there you go. I can only imagine how difficult it would be, for example, to throw the boot at that cat that's chasing the mouse. Unfortunately, I don't think I have the time to go and get the boot to test it, but here's the yeah. Oh, there we go. There's that one coin left on the ground. Let's see if we can actually manage to pick it up. Get over there and click. Yes, and then use the hand icon. You have a sort of two-step system to emulate doing the point and click. Unfortunately, this was prior to sort of the advent of creating sort of a context-based system like they did with, say, Grim Fandango or Monkey Island 4. It's unfortunately just sort of a byproduct of the system, and just sort of that they hadn't innovated quite that far at this point. In its own way, and I know it's pretty hideous and it's difficult to look at, but I mean, like, if I had an NES that and I had run this back in the early 90s, now I mean, like, I was already playing at that point a lot of the Sierra classics, so It was a little bit more difficult probably for me to reconcile the graphical sort of fidelity of this, but oh, there's the bear. Oh, and that awful, awful sawtooth sound that they're using for the bees. Oh, and your anthill. Fortune teller gypsy wagon. Oh, man. It's a pity that they didn't try to make use of more of the palette. I mean, here it's mostly like black, green, brown, yellow, and blue for the sky, without a whole lot of additional effort on their part to sort of work in a lot of the other colors. I've seen some great work done with sort of limited palettes. Now, I was big into the sort of amateur sprite creation scene a few years ago, and so I mean, obviously there's oh yeah, the gnome and sun. It's a treat, really, seeing this game in this state, in this way. But yeah, that's sort of all the time that we have for this one. I thought that it was worth showing you guys, if you were interested, to show you what they did in order to make King's Quest VI on the NES. It's not bad. It's honestly not bad. It's not the PC version, and on any given day, if you were gonna ask me which one I would prefer to play, obviously I would go and do the old point and click version, because this one definitely has some idiosyncrasies that make it a lot more difficult to play. But at the same time, it's definitely a worthy attempt at making a port of an old game that had so many challenges. So many to deal with. So good on the people that did the port of this, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this little trip down NES memory lane. Thank you for joining me, as always. You guys are the best. I will see you again next time. And for those of you wondering what happened to Evo, this was a one-time thing. There will be Evo more next week. Thank you for watching. Take care.